So on August 20th, 2020, Global News reported that American teachers who have knowingly been exposed to COVID may still have to go to class and teach. Now, do you think our leadership in Ontario would do this? Or that a Canadian leadership would allow it? Especially when Canadian public health says those who have been exposed to COVID must isolate for 14 days? The answer may surprise you. Hi, I'm Josh MacEwen with Dufferin News, and as far as I can tell, we're the first to report on whether or not Canadian teachers will be allowed to go to class if they've been exposed to COVID, let's say through a spouse. Well, even in these unprecedented times, education is still being left up completely to the provinces, which in Ontario means a lot of responsibility has been shifted down to the school boards. So to find out the answers to anything, one should probably check there first. Well, luckily the Upper Grand District School Board has a relatively comprehensive FAQ page that is updated frequently that keeps everyone informed. It's a great resource. Well, on August 25th, I came across a tweet from someone who did see that the UGD-SB has specified whether or not teachers will be allowed to teach in class after having been exposed to COVID, such as through a spouse, like I said earlier. And the answer was, as per the UGD-SB on August 24th on their FAQ page, the teacher would be expected to self-monitor. If they do not exhibit any symptoms, they are able to continue teaching. Now, this would mean that the Upper Grand District School Board is in direct conflict with the Canadian government's directive to isolate when you've been in contact with someone who has or even been expected to have or suspected to have COVID. Now, I reached out to the communications department for the Upper Grand District School Board to see where this direction came from, because after seeing the last board meeting, I found it extremely hard to believe that they would implement this themselves, as they do seem to be prioritizing safety there. I was also curious to find out whether the UGD-SB knew about this before student pre-registration closed the day before on August 23rd, again, as this was put to their page on August 24th, the day after, as this information could be a major factor in a parent's decision to register their kid for in-class learning. And I also suspect that the trustees for the school board would have brought it up at their last meeting as well, if they had known about it. Well, I still haven't gotten an answer from the Upper Grand District School Board, and the week is over. But I did reach out to a director for the Ontario Public Schools, Jan Johnstone, chair of Blue Water District School Board, to see if this directive was being applied there, as in the teachers would still be allowed to teach if they've been exposed to COVID. And also I want to know if she could provide some insight on where the direction came from. Well, she said the direction came from public health, or that the direction would be from public health. And I asked this on August 25th. Well, the next day, on August 26th, which is still the case as per this reporting, UGD-SB updated the answer to this question to say public health would provide this direction based on each unique circumstance. Well, this essentially means the same thing, that teachers who have been exposed to COVID may be able to continue teaching. It just alleviates responsibility from the school boards and places it on public health. Now, I've looked in to see what I can find in other documentation, and what I can find at the provincial level was some weak language that leaves it open for this to occur. The province of Ontario released operational guidance for reopening schools under COVID-19. Now, on August 28th, 2020, it says situations will arise where students, staff, or teachers may be exposed to COVID-19 outside of the school environment, for example, to family members that don't attend the school, social contacts outside of the school as well. Their response to this is that household members and others who live with the individual who have tested positive should isolate for 14 days. Now, this is guidance, not mandates, and they use the word should, not must. And again, this is quite different than the overall directive from Government of Canada, where they say that, again, if you've been exposed to anyone who has COVID or even suspected to have COVID, you must isolate. Now, I don't want to place all the blame on Ford and the Ontario government, as they can't print their own money, and I can't find anything from the other provinces. And let's get real, these are unprecedented times, as we keep hearing about. And Justin Trudeau lives here in Ontario, and he has kids going to school here. Why isn't he bringing this up? I don't know, but when it turns out to returning to school here in Canada, our plans aren't much better than what's going on in the U.S.
It's all hands on deck right now when it comes to getting our kids back to school safely this September. We have spared absolutely no expense. We have taken every step possible, and I am proud that Ontario has the safest, most cautious plan in the entire country right now. And that means dedicating nearly $900 million That's $900 million to make sure we get this right. Because, my friends, getting 2 million students, getting hundreds of thousands of support staff back to school this September, it's not the easy thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. I won't hesitate to do whatever it takes, because the safety of our children will always be our #1 priority. My friends, we have an extremely robust plan, the safest and most cautious plan in the entire country. And today, the federal government has announced that Ontario will be receiving an immediate payment of $381 million to support schools reopening. This is good news because, as I told the Prime Minister during our meeting last Friday, when it comes to keeping our kids safe, we're all in this together.
Teachers' unions say they are simply demanding the same kind of safety measures that have been put in place in every other public space in the province.